Last week, my guest was Heather from Create Your Own Cozy. If you guys missed that episode, we talked about her being a booth owner, her YouTube journey, and then collaborating with other content creators. That was definitely an episode you guys didn't want to miss. So go check it out. Now, in this week's episode, I'm going to be talking about why I decided not to do Cranberry Fest and then go all in on my own October event. Was this a hard decision? Well, you guys are going to find out in today's episode.
Welcome to the Rescued and Upcycled podcast with weekly inspiration, tips on trying new techniques, and overall real talk about owning your own DIY business. Now here's your host, Sonnet Ullenbrock.
Welcome back to Rescued and Upcycled. I'm your host, Sonnet Ullenbrock. I want to just thank you guys for joining me on my podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to go and chat about my on the road booth and Cranberry Fest, and then dive into why I created my own event. Early on in my podcast, I briefly discussed about being on the road and how that all started. Honestly, when I was on the road, I was actually loving it at first. But after doing it for several years, it really got old, you guys. And really to talk about like why I loved having an on the road booth, it was like instant gratification, quick money. And you would do your event over the weekend, and whatever you sold, you'd have that immediately. That does not happen when you have a booth or a store. You get paid at the end of the month or like the beginning of the next month. So it's nice to have always that constant cash flow coming in. And if you hit it right with really good events, you did really well. And that's exactly what I did. I tried to hit up the best vendor events, and I was doing these every single weekend. Now, the bad things about having an on the road booth is that you always were constantly setting up and taking down. And this is backbreaking, you guys. It's a lot of work, especially if you are like me. I like to have a very elaborate booth. I don't just set up a tent, some tables, and throw some stuff on a table. No, it's very elaborate. You walked into my booth and it was like a little boutique. So that's why it took me a whole lot longer to do setup and takedown for no matter what event I was doing. Restocking inventory for your next event. That was a constant process. So if I had an event over the weekend, I would take stock of what I sold and I would look at that, and then I would have to recreate inventory, whether it be like my barn quilts or signs that I had that I was selling. And then I would have to be doing a lot of thrifting and continuously, making sure my on the road booth or everything that fit into my truck was fully stocked. Events are on the weekends. And that was the time that you made your money was on the weekends. But that took a lot of time away from my family. So I'm just trying to give you a little backstory about, how this all started. And why I loved it and why I did it for so long. I did it for approximately like 4 to 5 years of every single weekend. I would do like I actually paid for a full year of the farm market in downtown Appleton, and I almost did every single weekend, except there were specific weekends that I had chosen for other events. And then I would do St. Germain Farm and Flea Market every single weekend as well. So it was like a double dose or a double income coming in every weekend. But it gets old. It really does. I mean, it was a constant grind. My booths definitely got pushed to the wayside because my on the road booth got first dibs for everything. Any of the leftovers then went into my booths, and I tried to get in there weekly, but it was hard. Plus, I was still working a full-time job. So after the world shut down, and we remember that day or that time when that eventually happened, I was actually just really able to slow down enough and take a deep breath and really analyze my business. And I've talked about that in, my previous episode of how I did that. But one of the areas that I looked at was my on the road booth. And I just very quickly decided I'm only going to do the best shows. I'm going to really narrow it down and I'm going to pick my money makers, my big money makers. And what I decided was I was going to do Antique Acres, which is a spring event, which is in May. And if you guys have been following me, you know it's coming up May 17th and 18th. And then I chose Cranberry Fest, which is in October. It's always the first weekend of October. And I chose those two events because, Wendy's event in May, I had been doing it. I'm doing very well there, but I liked it because you had an extended period of time to set up. It wasn't like mad rush. She gave us a week to set up. So you could have your booth just perfect. Plus, it's a great event. It's well attended and it just keeps getting better and better. I have a lot of local followers that come and I love it. It's one of, my all-time favorites. My Cranberry Fest event, that one was like my biggest moneymaker. Honestly, like, it was so good that I never, ever envisioned I would not do it. I was I just always assumed that this is something that was gonna be part of my life, and many of you that have been following me know that, I have been doing Cranberry Fest for years. So I started doing it even before, the world shut down, and then I continued it thereafter. And at that point, that's when my YouTube journey started. So that is when you guys were able to join me on this journey of Cranberry Fest. And I loved bringing you guys along for that. You got to see all the back end, like the what went into everything about Cranberry Fest. So it just was a lot of work, from the prepping, which took approximately 3 months of prep time. And then I rented a trailer, and then there was one full day dedicated to just load up. And I brought you guys along for that. And then the day which was set up. So I would get up really early and I would drive up to Eagle River and then it was a full day of setup and then the 2-day event. And after the second day, it was breakdown and then it was head home. And it was a long weekend, but it was worth it every minute because I always felt like the effort I put in, I got the return for it. So, to tell you guys a little bit about Cranberry Fest, it is held in Eagle River, Wisconsin. So, many people get this confused with the other Cranberry Fest in Warrens. Now, this one is in Eagle River and it is held on the fairgrounds of in Eagle River. It's got like ton of vendors and it is always held the first weekend in October. Uh, it is a requirement that it's handcrafted, or upcycled, you touch it, that's what should be there. And then, yes, it's always that first weekend. So, like I said, though, I never ever, envisioned that this would never happen again. Like, when going into last year, I was already thinking about, things that I would do different. What am I going to add? Every year I would always analyze last year's booths. What went over really well? What do I want to bring back? What am I going to retire from, my handcrafted? What am I going to make that's different and new? I'm always just trying to think about that because every year there's always a couple really hot items. And so the prep that goes into it, you have to think about like with my barn quilts. I had to have enough barn quilts because I want to sell a lot of barn quilts. I want a lot of different patterns and color choices for them to choose from. if I had a specific sign, I wanted to bring X amount of that sign so I could always be replenishing because this is a 2-day event. People are ready to shop. I mean, when they start shopping, they love it. So I would bring like furniture pieces, I would bring small pieces. I mean, you name it, I would bring it. I would jam pack as much as I could in my trailer, in my husband's back end of his truck, and the entire back seat, and even the front seat. So there were a couple times I'm like, am I even going to get my clothes in here? Because I had it so packed, but that's what you had to do. And when I would come home, everything that I had in the trailer basically fit in the back end of my truck. I would do that good, you guys. And that's why this was very eye-opening when what all happened and transpired. So when I first started my booth at Cranberry Fest, the first year I started with just a tent, or with a single booth, I should say, in the tent. So when I first decided to do it, I did a little research and everyone said, you need to be in the tent. The tent is the place to be. It's protected from the weather because at Cranberry Fest, the weather is kind of crazy. You could get like warm weather, sunny, beautiful fall day, or it could be like sleeting, it could be snowing, it could be raining. There could be severe winds. You just never knew what you were going to get. So they were all, like all the other vendors, yeah, definitely. If you can get in the tent, get in the big canopy tent. I'm like, all right. So I registered and I was able to get a booth in the tent. I was so excited. So that first year I set up and I was between two really nice gals. The one gal, she had a double booth on the one side, and then the other gal had a double booth on my other side. And both of them were in the shape of a U. So you'd walk in and you could walk out the other side. So they both had like U walkthroughs. And I realized very quickly that they were doing a lot better than I was because of the size of their booth and how they had it set up that way. Where my booth was a 10 by 10 and I had almost like a kind of like a U shape set up. I had a table and on the side on each side, and then I had one on the back. And I wanted to maximize the space, and I tried to get as much in there as I could. It was a 10 by 10. So, I mean, not a lot of space for a lot of people to be in the booth, but enough. And a lot of people that walk into the tent, I realized it's like a herd of cattle, you guys. They walk in, they're looking down, they don't even look up. I wanted to ask half of them, like, why do you even walk in? You're not even looking. And I don't know if it's just like they're just, following the next person, or maybe they're not the shoppers. I don't know. So I'm like, okay, what can I do right away? I'm like, I'm doing good. I'm having sales. And what can I do differently though next year? So already I am planning for next year. I am plotting and I'm like, I'm going to see if my mom will do a double booth with me. And I spoke to her about it and I got her all excited about being in Cranberry Fest and she agreed. So that year I did really good, you guys. I was really happy with my sales. But I was sad on the other hand because the other two gals, they did so good and they weren't nervous about telling me how good they did. They were very open and honest about it. And I was like, and I didn't tell them how I did, but I did not as good as they did, obviously. So the next year, my mom and we got a double booth in there and we did the U shape and we had it set up just like I thought it was perfect. And I mean, sales increased. I actually think I doubled my sales and I was really happy. But I'm like, I still like, what can I do to tweak it? What can I do differently? I feel like I'm still not doing as good as those other two ladies. Why? Well, I also realized too that they had a lot of repeat customers. Like their customers, they had been coming to Cranberry Fest for years and years and years, and their customers would come back and buy different things from them. So I'm like, okay, I just need to get maybe my clientele. I don't know. I still felt like a lot of people were not looking at the booth. So then the following year, this was a real kicker at first, I thought. I forgot to send the paperwork in by the specific date. So I called and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't get my paperwork in. I am so sorry. Can I send it now and get my same booth? And they said, no, I'm sorry. You didn't send it in by the date. We gave up your spot. There's no available spots left in the tent. They're gone. I am like, oh my gosh. I felt like it was a security blanket because that's how all the vendors made it sound. You needed to be in the tent. You have to be in the tent. So they're like, we have a spot near the tent, right outside the tent you can have. I'm like, okay. It was actually less expensive because the outside booths were $50 less expensive, and then I didn't have to pay for electricity on top of it. So, I'm like, "All right." And that was the other thing. Inside, it was really dark, you guys. So, I had as much lighting as possible, but it just still did not feel like enough because the tent itself blocked so much of the light. So, long story short, next year we set up, we go big again, and I mean, we thought the tent or the our space looked amazing. We literally tripled our sales from being in the tent to being outside the tent. We did so good. We were like floored. We could not believe that just being on the outside, so many people could linger longer. They could walk around and like talk and like they did not feel the pressure of having to like keep moving because that's how crowded it gets in the tent. I am like, "Oh my gosh." It was like a blessing in disguise that that happened. So, we did that for 2 years, and then next year we always kept on increasing our profit. And so I got this idea and I said, well, maybe we should do a 4 pod. So on the outside, the booths are set up in a 4 pod, so 4 10 by 10 booths. And we had two 10 by 10s next to each other. So the following year, my mom took a 10 by 20, so two 10 by 10s, and I took two 10 by 10s, and we had a 4 pod and we even did better. It was like, oh my gosh. So it was such a great decision for us to do that. So then now coming back to last year, it was our second year of having the 4 pod. And we were really excited about it. We both had been prepping and leading up to it. The weather was really weird this year. And they were getting lots of rain in northern Wisconsin. And it was just really bizarre. So then they had a little bit of a dry spell because you don't want it to be too wet up there because one thing that happens is there's always in the back of our mind, are they going to tell us that we can't drive on? And you don't want that. It has never happened. They always threaten it, but it never happens. So we do all this prep work, and my stuff, you guys, is heavy. I have barn quilts, I have signs, I have big boxes, like I have like everything packed like a certain way. And normally it's so easy. You just pull up to your spot, you empty out your trailer and your truck, and then you park and then you start setting up. The day before, it was raining, and we get the news that we get the email from the Cranberry Fest board saying, be ready to haul your items in. So there's no trailers on the grounds. Something that would typically take us a couple hours to unload took us all day. It was backbreaking and on top of like that part of it, we had to then set up our booths. So it at first, I did have a dolly, and the dolly does turn into like a rolling cart, but where we were parked, so I should say we got there and we thought maybe they would change their minds. They didn't. People started driving on, everyone got yelled at, we had to park. And then we had our dollies and we started loading everything on the dollies. Well, where I was parked or where like we were parked, we had to leave our dollies on the inside of the fence because there's just this tiny opening to get through. And I had to like haul everything to the dolly. So there was still like, I couldn't pull my dolly up to the trailer, load, and then push. No, because the ground was so uneven, there was big rocks, the space to get in was like small. I had to haul everything from the trailer to beyond the fence, and then from there still push it. And it was, I can't even tell you how many trips. So it literally took us all day long. So something that would have just taken a quick couple hours to unload, and then we could really dedicate all that time to set up. We were unloading that entire time, and it was like crazy. I just was so confused, like, like, I'm thinking to myself, I wasn't even confused. I was more like just overwhelmed, like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot even imagine doing this," but I had to. And then I look at my mom and dad, you guys, because they are older than me, and they at least had each other so they could, do it together, where it was me. I was solo sonnet, like hauling, and my back started hurting, and I everything was just going wrong. And we finally got everything loaded, or brought to the tent. And then we looked at each other and we're like, we have to set up. Oh my gosh. And the temperature started dropping. It was getting colder. And I said, okay, let's just set up the basics and we'll come back in the morning when we are refreshed, and we'll just come back super early. So because of being there early the previous years, we know that we always like to, fluff our tents up, right when it opens, that when we get there, it's dark. So my parents have invested in this really cool lantern lamp thing. And so that's what we had. And we got there so early that I don't even know. We were so scared that the guards, because they have guards there to guard everything, that we were going to get yelled at. That's how early we were. Way before when we probably should have been there. And we got there and we just started working our butts off, getting everything else set up. And we were still setting stuff up when people started showing up. It just so that really sets the stage of like everything that we were feeling, like how we felt, just going into it. At this point, I felt a bit broken, like I felt like it broke me, like the whole unloading. And then the crowd started showing up. We were getting sales, but I could tell it wasn't like the years before. In past years, we always had a line of customers at our checkout nonstop, every year, no matter what. It was constant. We did not have a line of customers. We had lookers. We had, and the crowds were there, but not as much as they had been. It was just, I think it just felt like a really off year. So I did a quick scan of like how many sales, and I could tell like midday we were down. And I figured that because I assumed it was going to start off like it had been in the past, and it didn't. So, anyways, long story short, that day ended. I looked at our sales and we made good money, you guys, because every year we made good money, but it wasn't what it had been in the past. And as a salesperson or having a business, you want to always try to exceed the year before. You want to try to push that envelope, make more money. I mean, that's my ultimate goal for doing these shows. And I realize there can be down years and stuff, but this was pretty substantial. And I said to my husband, I don't know if I want to do this again. I honestly, like, after how backbreaking it was, I can't envision ever having to haul my stuff ever again that far. And I have a lot. I have a double booth, and my mom and dad had a double booth. It's a lot of product. And so my husband's like, "Oh, just sleep on it. It'll be fine. You're not going to not do Cranberry Fest." I'm like, I'm kind of feeling like I don't want to. And he's like, "Just sleep on it." So I fell asleep. I woke up in the morning and I said, "I think I'm going to talk to my mom and dad today." And he's like, "Maybe you should just like, let the whole weekend, come to a conclusion and like regroup after that and just see how it all plays out." So we got there we reset our booth up, and we I don't the we I okay, so from Saturday to Sunday, Saturday sales, whatever you make on Saturday, you can typically expect approximately half that. So I was kind of figuring out how much we were going to make. It was even slightly down though by the end of the day, or like by midday I could tell like people were dwindling. And normally if there's not a Packer game at noon, people will shop till the very end. And it wasn't like that. I'm like, what in the heck is going on? For as much work as we put into this, and this is like the outcome or what's happening, I was like, oh. So finally, we my mom and dad got us a breakfast or a pizza. They have like these really good oven roasted pizzas made there, and my mom grabbed me one, and I walked up to him and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna break the news to him. I don't want to do this again. And I said, well, I've been thinking about things, and honestly, I don't know if I want to do Cranberry Fest again. And they both, oh, we didn't know how to tell you. We didn't want to do Cranberry Fest again. This was like the worst year ever. Like, I think it broke all of us. The loading part, the unloading part. And I know that they always gave us a heads up, you guys, that could happen. But honestly, like when we put the stakes in the ground, the reason this is, I just want to let you know, like if the ground gets too saturated and cars drive on it, this is the fairground. So it could cause ruts and it can cause damage to the grounds. We could not even get a stake in the ground barely because it was so rock hard. There was no good. I mean, they had not received that much rain. If they would have really analyzed it, we could have all drove on it. So on Sunday, when we did a breakdown, we all drove on it and it was perfectly fine. There was no damage. So I think they were a bit hasty this year, and I don't know why. And I think that part of it just really broke both my parents and myself. And I finally said, I'm also thinking, why don't we do something different? Like had been tossing around the idea for a while to do something at my home. And I have a really huge backyard. I'm a master gardener. And yes, my flower beds need a bit of attention, but I'm like, I can clean it all up. We could do something in the fall at my home. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, oh, I really love this idea because I have a greenhouse. So we could set up an entire display in the greenhouse. I have my studio. We could set up an entire display in there. I also have like we handmade our fireplace. It's like actually a brick fireplace. It's so cool. It's all upcycled material. And I'm like, there's like a whole seating area. I'm like, we could create like a vignette there. I have an outside bar. We could create a vignette over there. I had all like this whole vision. And some of the things though that were, a bit concerning. Well, number one was parking. Not sure where everyone would park if I did create an event and it was huge. Bathrooms, would I need a porta potty? Because I sure in the heck am not going to let a bunch of strangers into my home. And, just logistics. I was just trying to figure it all out. I mentioned it on my live, I think, and my YouTube video, recap YouTube video for Cranberry Fest. And my friend Wendy had watched it, and she is the owner of Antique Acres. And she reached out to me and said, would you be interested in renting Antique Acres for your event? Rather than having it at your home, you could just do all the prep work and then just have it here. You could rent Antique Acres. And she goes, you don't have to make a decision now. You can always get back to me. And as I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, this does make a lot of sense. And then we talked about it a little bit more. And I just realized very quickly that it was absolutely perfect. Her venue, you guys, is big. It's beautiful. The grounds are just absolutely gorgeous. They just take such good care of it. I mean, it's got this beautiful old vintage truck waterfall into a pond, and the barn, you guys, it's amazing. So I'm like, I love it. I love the idea. And I just had to wrap my head around like how I wanted to run the event. I knew I wanted to host a two-part event. I wanted vendors in the barn. So the weekend of it would be the same weekend as Cranberry Fest, and that is the weekend of an event in our area called the Vintage Shop Hop. And so the event will run right alongside the Vintage Shop Hop. I'm going to get on the map for the Vintage Shop Hop, and so I wanted to have vendors. I reached out to a bunch of vendors that I know from Antique Acres that I love, and they've agreed to do it. I do need a few more vendors, and I'm going to put out some information about that. So if you are listening and you would be interested, definitely reach out. I did not realize that there were a couple more spaces within the barn that I could rent out. And with that said, because I do want to recoup, the rental fees, this just makes so much more sense. So I am going to basically require like what do you sell, photos, things like that. But that is going to be held in the barn. I did know that I always wanted to have like a creative aspect to my event as well, and where I would bring in other creatives and we would host a series of workshops. So I was trying to toss the idea around, like how I was going to make this all happen in the barn. And then I was starting to talk to some of my friends or other creative friends that attended other events. And then I heard their suggestions. And once I listened to like how those events were ran, I figured it all out. I decided it was going to be like two separate events. So the market or, like the vendors will be in the barn. I reached back out to my friend Wendy and she and I worked it out. I'm going to have a separate area just for the creative event. So once I figured that all out, I was like, okay. So I have a big majority of the vendors that I love already ready to go for the barn. And you guys, these vendors are amazing. Their displays are amazing. They're ready to restock after the first day. They bring the goods. So be ready to shop. Then the creative friends, I reached out to a bunch of creatives and I came up with a schedule. And so the other event is going to be just workshops, but it is going to be a ticketed event. So it's going to be limited to certain amount of tickets. And that is actually going to, as long as I can get everything ready, the tickets are going to go on sale this coming Friday. So that is going to be set to go. I have to finish and tweak just a few things. So I'm going to go live on Friday at 10 o'clock and I'm going to kick it off with the announcement. So I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of, insight into that. So, but once I had that all set, you guys, I determined I had to figure out what I wanted to call my event. I mean, I'm not going to call it Antique Acres because that's Wendy's thing. So I sat down one Friday evening and I just started a brainstorming session. And it took me weeks to come up with a name for my podcast, you guys. So I did not know what I was going to call my event. And like for the podcast, it was weird. I like sat down and I was brainstorming constantly for that. And then out of the blue, one day I'm just sitting there and it suddenly came to me, rescued and upcycled. I'm like, exactly. It's exactly what I do. I rescue things and I upcycle them. I love talking about it. I love talking about all aspects of my business. So it just made perfect sense to call my my podcast that. That is exactly kind of what happened with my event. I was brainstorming, I didn't know. I was down to two names. And then the next morning, I'm like, I was gonna go with the other one, and then I started creating like the actual logo for it, and I did the other one. So it at that point, I knew it was meant to be, and it is going to be the Vintage Soul So the Vintage Soul Market and Creative Retreat. So it's going to be the Vintage Soul Market for the vendors, and then the Vintage Soul Creative Retreat for the creatives. And I am so excited about it, you guys. So it is going to be a total of a 3-day event for the creative side. For the vendors, it's a 2-day event. So it's going to be October 3rd through the 5th. And the Vintage Soul Market, like I said, will participate in the Vintage Shop Hop, which is October 4th and 5th. That's Friday and Saturday. There's a map. I'm going to be on it. So this is the cool part. If you guys don't know about the Vintage Shop Hop, it actually runs in Wisconsin and down into Illinois. And the map showcases like areas. So it has it broke down by all the shops in a specific area. So you can actually look at the map and say, hey guys, let's get together. We're going to hit this area on Friday and then this area on Saturday. And then you have the map and you can always go to the other. You don't have to just do it on the Vintage Shop Hop. You can hit these shops up at any time, like not mine, but you know what I'm saying, like the other shops. So it's a great way to be on the map. And but yeah, so that is going to happen. It's like the 2-day event for the vendors. And then the Vintage Soul Creative Retreat is going to be possibly either a 2-day or a 3-day event. And how that's going to work is for 2 full days, which is going to be the same Friday and Saturday. There is going to be a schedule of events those 2 days, and it's so fun. Wait till I tell you a little more about that. But so you can sign up for just the 2-day event if you want to for the VIP ticket. So you can upgrade and get all 3 days with the VIP ticket, and then that is going to be on Thursday as well. And how that's going to work is the VIP is going to kick off at 1 o'clock on Thursday, and you'll get early bird shopping. So all the vendors will be set up by 1 o'clock on that Thursday. And as a VIP ticket, you'll get to be able to shop to your heart's content. And then after that, we're going to go in and you're going to be able to meet all the creatives that are attending. And then you'll be able to do a barn quilt workshop and then have snacks like hors d'oeuvres and beverages. And it'll be just a nice, relaxing afternoon. So that is the VIP ticket. And then Friday and Saturday will be the 2-day event. So how that is going to work is so like on Friday, the creatives that will be on Friday will be me. I'm going to kick off the event. Then we're going to have Debbie from LZ Lane Art Garage. She is going to kick off blending DIY paint. So I'm super excited about that. Jane from Jane Belante's Art. She's very well known for like mixed media, and she's going to talk about layering with mixed media. Then we have Heather from Create Your Own Cozy. We're still working out some details about her project, but it's coming together. And then after that, we're going to have a panel discussion with all the creators. So this is going to be, I think, one of my favorite things because I did this at the IOD conference, or we did, I should say. The sisters had everyone that, they had Debbie Beard, Annie Sloan, Jonathan Mark Mendez, the IOD sisters, they were all up on a panel. And everyone could ask them questions. So if you had a question for a specific one, you could ask your question and then everybody would hear it. It was so fun. So that is going to end the day. And then after the panel discussion, everyone can go back and mingle in the barn and chat and just for a little bit, just to end the evening. And then Saturday, it's going to kick off with Lynn from L&J Goods. And then Kristen from Simply Joy Creations. She's going to also talk a bit about mixed media. Connie with the Painted Photographer. She's going to do a DIY painting pumpkin. So that is so fun. You guys all get to do that. Jen from Rustic Rehabs, still working out the nitty gritty details of hers, but I think you got what we're planning. I think you're going to really like. And then Royce is going to end it from Royce Cycle Decoupage Paper. So she is going to, teach us, I'm sure, a bunch of decoupage techniques and tips. And she is definitely the guru of decoupage. So I'm super excited to have her as well. And you guys, I'm just so excited to be hosting my very own event. It is something that I've thought about for several years now to do something on my own. I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do or what I wanted to host. And I just felt like everything fell in place this year. And yeah, it exactly just fell in place. And as I'm pulling, pulling it all together, I'm super excited about it. So all these details will be on my website, which is www.sonnetsgardenblooms.com. And yeah, so you'll have all the details out there, but it will be showing up on Friday. And I think I'm going to have it just go live right before I do my live, which is at 10 o'clock. So then that's when tickets will go on sale. And keep in mind some things that came up or questions. If you do want to fly, you can. You do not necessarily need to be local to attend. I mean, it's a 3-day event. It's kind of like a conference. It's a retreat. And you could fly directly into Appleton. There is an airport here. It's nice and small, so it's very easy to get through. And then there's hotels right there, and it's very close to the event. You would still need to get probably like a rental car, but you could still attend. So, or you guys, if there's people that know each other, you could even do like an Airbnb together or, share a hotel and a car. So there's a lot of possibilities, guys. And I will have a lot of that information out there. But it is going to be so fun. And I am so excited to meet so many of you. And I will be jumping back and forth between the vendor event and the retreat. So even if you can't come to the retreat and you are local and you want to stop by the event for the vendors, definitely do it. I have some real fun things going on in there as well. So there's going to be lots more as it comes closer that I'll be giving out sneak peeks and what I have up my sleeve for the event. So all right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I just wanted to give you a little background about why or how things changed. I guess, like I always mention, businesses are ever changing and your road is never going to stay the same. Your path is always going to be changing. And I just always look for signs. And I definitely had one this last year. And then, like I said, a door opened when Wendy gave me a call and everything fell into place. So I feel so blessed to be on this journey and taking you guys along with me. But so now next week, you guys, I have a surprise. No, I'm just kidding. Connie from Painted Photographer. She is going to be my guest. You guys may know Connie from her beautiful artwork that she creates or from her Whiskey Wednesdays lives, where she teaches you guys the how-tos of painting. And she is going to be my guest next week. So I am super excited to have her. And I cannot wait to introduce you guys to her because she is also creating rice paper each and every month for my Maker's Box. So she is so super talented. I just knew right away when I created my box, I was going to have her be part of it. So I cannot wait to introduce you guys to her. And I might be asking her to be on one of my upcoming lives as well. All right. So mark your calendars for Friday. I'm going to be opening up the tickets then for my October event. All right. If you guys are listening to me on any of the podcast platforms, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you guys don't miss out on any episodes. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Sonnets Garden Blooms, where I always put out a ton more content. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and we will see you next week. Bye.